Good morning, boys and girls. Lunch is coming, don't worry, after this. Okay, once again, loud enough, please tell the person next to you, this is going to be the loudest good morning of my life. Come on, say that, quickly. Tell the person, give a high five and say, this is going to be the loudest good morning of my life. It's good afternoon? Okay. It doesn't matter. Okay. So boys and girls, today, we have been talking about leadership, and we have talked enough of it yesterday and today morning. We all agreed that all of us are either leaders or we want to be leaders. And if we are leaders, we want to be successful leaders. Is there anyone in this room who doesn't fall into this category? Please raise hands. Who doesn't fall? Everyone. Thank you. Today what I'm going to be endeavoring at is looking at the drastically changing environment that is presenting before us. Are we aware of this? Number one. And once we are aware of it, what are we going to do about it? So the topic today is VUCA, leaders in the VUCA world. Where's my presentation? Oh my God. Sorry for this. Okay. Right. So we are talking about leadership in the VUCA world. I would like to ask you, how many of you are aware of this word, this term? How many of you have heard of VUCA? Okay, quite a few. How many of you have studied about it, are well versed with the VUCA environment? What does it mean? What does it imply? And what do we do about it? How many of you? Not many. So today I hope to be giving you at the end of this session a very clear picture about the unclear world that stands before us. We all are living in this VUCA world, and we need to navigate as leaders through it. There is a rough sea there. I can do nothing about that sea. I can do nothing about the waves. I can do nothing about the winds, but I can do something about how to swim in that. We'll have to adjust our sails. We can't have the environment changing. We have to change according to the changing environment. So VUCA is an acronym, and it's taken with these four words: VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. This is the type of world that we are facing now, which is turning out to be the new normal world. Change is the only constant. We've been hearing about that. When I was a young boy, things were changing. And my grandfather says that when he was young, things were changing then too. Then what is the difference between that change and the change today? Anyone? Yeah? The speed at which it's changing. So today, even when I'm talking to the to the college students, and I do a lot of work on college to corporate, I talk about the greatest challenge that you have in front of you today is the speed of change, coping up with the speed of change. That's the biggest challenge we have. And I have a quote which says, and it's my prayer, God, give me the capability of coping up with the consequences of the decisions I make. It is coping up with the change, coping up with the decisions I make in that changing world, right? So this term VUCA was taken from the US Marine Corps, where in the late 90s, they realized that the world was changing far enough. Excuse me, noise there. Okay. So they realized that the battlefield conditions were changing, the battlefield environment was totally changing, and we need to train our US Marine cadets for the new world, and therefore this term came up. It was talking about a very fast-paced, unstable world full of emerging changes. Let's go through this a little more deliberately and understand what is, okay, it doesn't matter. So, volatility. Now, what is volatility relating to? It's relating to the speed of change we just talked about. So, the world is so volatile. In uncertainty, we are talking about the multiplicity of options that we have, far more than what we had yesterday. We are talking of complexity where there are far too many options and you don't know which one to take. And the last thing is ambiguity, where there's no right answer. There are many options and you don't know which one is the right one, and sometimes it is difficult to decide which one is better than the other. And that is where your intuition comes in, your guts come in and all that. Going through these terms a little more deliberately, first let's talk about volatility. Volatility is talking about the unstable environment, the way it keeps changing so fast. And you know, in the army we used to be talking about foresight, where foresight stops functioning, where it becomes a limiting factor because it's difficult to predict what's going to happen. Now, to be prepared for that, what do? We have to match our investments with the risks involved. Uncertainty. Uncertainty is again about unpredictability. I don't know what's going to happen. Everything looks uncertain in the future. It's the inability to know everything. You want to know, you want to be clear about what we are going to do, but it is very difficult to be able to predict what's going to happen. A small story here, which I heard a few days back, that a lady who was doing wonderfully well in the corporate world, in a very senior position, was about to be promoted. At the same time, she used to go to the church and she got motivated to join the church. She had two options: to continue with her career and rise to the highest level in the corporate world, or to sacrifice all that and give up and join the church. So she wrote to a lot of her friends to find out what was the best option for her. And there were far too many conflicting opinions. Some people felt that she must continue and reap the fruits of her hard work and do well in her corporate world, whereas the others were fascinated by the emotional connect with the church and said, oh, I think it's a wonderful thing, you really have it in you and you'll do a good to humanity if you join the church. She couldn't decide what to do till one day she took a decision and joined the church. And then what she said is relevant here. She said, all the time I was looking for clarity, but the moment I had commitment, the clarity obviously came up. Once you decide to do something, the clarity will come. But when you keep juggling with a lot of options, the clarity vanishes. Complexity. Now, this is what complexity looks like. And if you all reflect in today's world, in your day-to-day routine, aren't we facing this complexity all the time? Let me explain to you a little bit about the three terms that I understood on the nature of a problem. The problems can be classified either into a simple problem, or a complicated problem, or a complex problem. A simple problem. A simple problem is, okay, I have to go from here, from the airport to, let's say, Colaba. I know there are options available. I can go by train, I can go by cab, I can go by bus, I can even walk. I also know what time I must reach there. I also know my resources. Can I take a bus ticket? Can I afford a cab? How much time do I have? Various juggling factors, but I know that I have to meet all these conditions. I can take up an option and solve this problem. That's a simple problem. You know what you have, you know where you have to go, and you have to just look at the best option. Complicated problem. For example, manufacturing an aircraft. I know that I need an aircraft which should be able to fly at, let's say, 30,000 feet. I know that it must fly at a speed of, let's say, 200 miles per hour. So I know where to go. But do I know how much time I'll take to go? No. It's a complicated problem, from design to the structure, to the construction, to the marketing. Whole lot of things are involved. Too many people are involved. Funds are involved. Availability of stores, procurement, etc., etc., etc. So it becomes a complicated problem. The complex problem, on the other hand, is I don't know where to go. I can't see, I can't predict what the terminal objective is. And the example is when you have a child. You have a baby, a 20-year project to convert that child into an adult. You can't predict what this child should be after 20 years. You know that you'll keep doing your best, you know somewhere the direction, and you keep moving towards that direction, hoping that you will be able to convert this child into a wonderful human adult. This is a complex problem, and that is the complexity of problems today. You don't know where you're going, you don't know where the markets are going. You've seen companies, big companies, shutting down in no time because they couldn't match up with how the things were changing. They couldn't predict what was happening. Nokia, Kodak, whole lot of examples are there. And the last one we talk about is ambiguity. Ambiguity comes about haziness. Haziness, that I don't know what's ahead. There is fog, there is dust. I can't see what is in front. Okay, and this is another element we have to struggle with. Now, having understood what this world is, where four elements we talked of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, now the question is, how do we navigate through this? And that's quite interesting. The solution, strangely, also comes from VUCA. And this time, the answer is vision, understanding, clarity, and does what it does. Is my why strong? We are still talking about the Simon Sinek's golden circle. How do I start with why? Do I know why I'm doing what I do? If that is strong, it is communicated, everyone lives that purpose, then your vision has been created to and communicated to right to the last man. So that this company I was talking to you will not say, I don't know what are my values. And almost every corporate program I do, I certainly make sure to or at least attempt to ask people in the audience, do you know what your company does? And try to find out if the vision has been percolated down to them or not. You have to live that. You have to live that vision. And then is a strategic and long-term perspective that if you have that in mind, then you know the direction you are going on is right. So the second thing, so first thing we said in our VUCA as an answer to the VUCA environment was vision. The next one we talk about is understanding. Do we understand what it implies? Do we understand what are the various things that are going to affect us? So it comes from curiosity, where you challenge the status quo. Am I going to do what I was doing 10 years back? No. What worked earlier, what worked today may not work tomorrow. Am I updating myself all the time? Am I challenging? Am I asking questions that is this what will work now or not? Empathy. Again, all these things have been talked so much in our leadership discussions yesterday. Empathy is, do I know what these people are wanting? You know, yesterday I had asked a question in that leaders panel discussion. Let me tell you, millennials today, they have their own way of working, they have their own objectives, and many of us at my age do not relate to them as easily. So if you don't have empathy, you don't know what are they, where are they coming from, what are their desires, what are their ambitions. If you are not aware of them, we have a mismatch. And that is quite a serious problem in the corporate environment today, at least in India, where the way we think in our senior leadership positions is not the way these people think. If we don't bridge that gap, we are in trouble. Open-mindedness. I have had the occasion to do a corporate training program for a senior leadership team where I was told that candidly the HR person said that we really want to change the mindset of the CEO, who also happens to be the owner of the company. And he, in a company which was dealing quite a lot in creativity, was coming from the old school of thought that people must come in a tie, they must be on time, etc., etc. And they said, sir, these people are creative, give them a creative license, let them come in shorts, let them work from home. And he could not adjust to that mindset. You'll have to be open-minded and see what can these people do and how can I facilitate and provide that environment. The third thing we come to is clarity. My son is a photographer, and I bought a new phone, my Note 5, bought it by his suggesting because I wanted a good camera. And one day when I wanted a good picture, I gave my handset to him and said, can you take this picture? And when he took that picture, I asked him, I can't understand why with the same camera when I take a picture, and I was taught in the army that when you take a aim, you hold your breath so that you don't move, so the aim is right. So I thought, okay, here also it's shooting in a camera. So I also stopped my breath and did everything possible, yet my picture was not as clear as his picture. And then you know what he did? He just took out the mobile and he cleaned the lens. Dad, have you ever cleaned the lens? And believe me, I got my idea of clarity that day. Did I remove that dust? Do I remove the fog around me? What is clarity? Clarity is absence of obstacles, absence of hurdles. Have you been able to remove the hurdles that are there in front of you? You attempt that, you will get clarity. So that's very important. First thing is, let's simplify things. We are always unclear because today we have a habit of doing too many things. We are juggling with too many things. We don't simplify. Also, somewhere in the corporate environment, again, one thing I see is a lot of jargon, a lot of complicated stuff. If something looks simple, it's unfashionable. How? You're handling such a simple thing. But we need to simplify things. We put them as simple. Particularly in our communications, the simpler you are, the better it will be understood. Intuition. Again, we talked enough about it. It is a gift of knowing what could happen, what are the options that can happen. And somewhere your guts, somewhere out of your experience, you know what could happen. Am I prepared for that? And then systems thinking. Do we have system approach? Do we have our processes? And do we look holistically at every aspect of it? Or do I just jump to a conclusion with that one perspective that I've had? And the last one is to handle ambiguity, we have agility and adaptability. I think today most of us have to be on our feet, and I've done it many times. You must have done it almost every day we do. I'll give you a small story. I do corporate training. We are in a camp and a company is coming in the morning, going back in the evening. Clearly they needed at least 2 days training, but you're all aware of the way we operate. There's a budget constraint, there's a time constraint, etc., etc. No. Brigadier, do it in 1 day. And they had lots of things to cover. They give you a list of 20 things to be done in 1 day. Okay. So I firstly put my foot down and say, 1 day, only these 3 things. Give me your top 3 things. I can't handle everything in 1 day. Incidentally, just as a small little joke, a young HR manager of a company rings me up and said, you do team building? I said, yes. Sir, we have a team building program coming up. Will you do it for us? I said, most certainly. Tell me something about it. What do you want? So team building. I said, team building is lots of things. What is good in your company? What is not so good? What do you want? Tell me whether you are looking at leadership, you are looking at communications, you are looking at trust, you are looking at coordination, communicate. What do you want in team building? She comes out with 5 things. So we want decision making, we want problem solving, we want communication, we want ownership, etc. 5 things. How many people? Sir, 200. 200 people, 5 things. How much time? Sir, 4 hours. I said, do one thing. Go to some other trainer. When he does that, please give me his name. I must go and learn from him how to do that. It doesn't happen. There's a process. And just before me, Rolf has talked about it. Learning is not something that will happen overnight in one little session. It is a continuous evolving process. In fact, when I came this morning, I had a mind to request Manya to keep my talk after Rolf, because he came in after him to be speaking on a subject which is similar is difficult. Okay, right. So, sorry, I was talking to you about that. So these people, let me go back to what I was saying. Yeah. So this company came and they were supposed to land up at 9 and they don't come at 9. No communication. At about 9:30 I get to know that 20 kilometers away their bus is broken down, half shaft is broken, no way can they get it repaired. So now the people are taking lifts in groups of 3s and 5s and 10s in trucks and all and coming. So by the time they came, it was 10:30, 11 I think. My co-facilitator now says, sir, in one day, how will we handle this? Because one activity which was to be done in 2 hours is gone. And now the flow will go bad and we'll not be able to cover. What do we do? So that's where the VUCA training comes in. Okay. So the moment they landed up, my co-facilitator was pleasantly surprised with the idea that I used. They sat down, I said, okay, we just had an activity. The activity was called broken half shaft. Now tell me, from the time that the shaft broke, sit in your groups and find out what all could you have done and what did you do. We talk of experiential learning. I created that experience of breakdown of the bus and their people coming to exactly what we wanted to cover, and my team building could be completed because I converted that 1.5 hours, 2 hours of loss of time into an activity. I've had a school. I was told by my staff that a school is coming for training. I'm all set, and when from the bus people start coming out, I find adults. And I said, you thought a school was coming? They said, no sir, it was a business school. Okay, and in less than 10 minutes, I was conducting a program for business school students when I was prepared for a school students. Similarly, it was quite in the beginning that I didn't realize that these things happen. I took it for granted that the audience that is coming to me will be English speaking. So I'm prepared with everything to be done in English. And when the people sit down, I look at them, they don't look like they would understand English. So I asked them, are you comfortable in English? They said no. So is Hindi okay? They said yes, Marathi is preferable. I said no Marathi, but I do it in Hindi. On the spot, I changed over my presentation from English to Hindi. That's the type of adaptability and agility you have to use. Okay, so whether these 3 points that are given there, decisiveness, innovation and empowerment. And I'm going to be talking a little more about innovation a little later, but look at how you are going to be thinking on the feet. Thinking on the feet is most important to be handling any VUCA situation. There's a guy who walked into a store and he wanted butter. He looked and he found only 1 kg butter. So he asked the salesman, can you give me half a kg butter? He said, sorry sir, we don't sell half kg, we only sell 1 kg butter. He says, no, but I want half kg, and I mean, why should I not get half kg when I want? He says, please hold on, I'll have to check from the manager. So he comes to the manager and he said, sir, there's some idiot there who's insisting on half a kg butter. And he finds that chap is standing right behind him. And he says, sir, and this gentleman wants the other half. Okay, so this man went away and the manager said, oh my God, you really think on the feet, you saved the situation. we could have been in terrible problem. Young boy, I have not met you before. Where do you come from? He says, I come from Mexico. Mexico? What made you come here all the way from Mexico? He says, I don't like Mexico. You know, either people play soccer or there are prostitutes in Moscow. He says, oh, my wife is from from Mexico. He says, so which team does she represent? Now, this is the way you have to be thinking on your feet to be adaptable to a situation that comes up and you don't have time to think about it. Now, we were in an industrial age when we started, when there was a manager who said, I know it, please do it. And we moved into the information age where the manager converted into a leader and you said, we all know, let's do it. We have now graduated and we have come into the imagination age where a leader says, who knows, and let's go by what he says. This transition from information to imagination age is what the VUCA world is talking about. We will have to be more imaginative. And now let me come to these 4 things before I come to an end. We'll have to use our imagination to handle volatility. We'll have to have inspiration to help overcome the uncertainty which is created by the unpredictable circumstances. We'll have to integrate things to realize the connections between different variables in this complex world, and it'll happen with a lot of collaboration, etc. Intuition, we just talked about, is to resolve the ambiguity which we'll have to cater for absolute gut feelings, intuitions to be able to handle those situations. Now, what's the way to go? Sorry. This was talked about yesterday by Omid. What is LOL? I know all of you use it in WhatsApp and all that, but this LOL is a little different. And I say, listen out loud. Listen. We'll have to be absolutely alert, and we realized yesterday, nobody taught us how to listen. We only learned how to speak. First thing to handle the VUCA world is to be alert, to be having your antenna out, to be listening in what's happening. The second is manage time. The host told you, I've written a book which is about to be published called $1 Million Second. I believe that time is such a resource. It is coming to a stage where probably, that's my intuition, that's my imagination, that in some time from now, when you pick up the phone and you say, hey, so-and-so, I want to meet you for half an hour, how much will you charge? Everyone will be buying and selling time. You will not be able to cope up with the type of time challenges that we are having, and if we don't understand the value of time, we will not be able to move ahead. I also go to the extent of imagining that there will be a time exchange. I may be charging 1,000 rupees for an hour and Rolf will charge 1 lakh for an hour. There'll be difference of what is the value of time I create and how much are people prepared for my time. This time is going to come very soon. Be prepared. Managing speed of change. I've already mentioned about it. We will have to be very particular about this. What are the 3 most important skills that you can acquire? Can I have from somebody? We have talked so much about it. Today, when you talk to children, do you know that 67% of the jobs that people do today will cease to exist in 10 years' time? I don't know how many of you know in this audience, what are the number of options, career options that a child has in class 12 today? When you're passing out from class 12, how many career options do you have? In my time, there were 3. You become an engineer or you become a doctor. If you're not capable of doing anything like this, become an army man. So I became an army man. Join the army. Right? But today you have many more options. Can somebody give me an idea of how many career options do people have today? Anyone? A guess? Let me shout out a figure. 20? Okay. In the Indian environment, now Rolf comes from, in India, there are 3,000 options. You go to a news website which has come up recently, it's not very new. It is called ncs.india.org, National Career Services. They'll give you 3,000 options available to a class 12 student. Today, all those who know of or teach children or your parents of children who are in class 6 or 7, you really have no idea of what type of jobs they will do, because the jobs they will do don't exist today. Like 15 years back, you couldn't have asked a person, will you like to be a software developer? Okay, so you will have to develop some traits, some skills which are going to be able to take you through this VUCA world. Can somebody guess? It's imagination, innovation and creativity. You must encourage your children, must encourage your peers in your corporate environment to develop these 3 skills. They are the only ones who will take you forward. And then of course it's teamwork, empowerment, outsourcing. The self-relevant, self-explanatory, and you know all about it. Now today we have data and we have processes, we have systems that we can predict a lot of things. Earlier we didn't have data, we didn't have the analytical options available. Today a leader will have to stay ahead of the predictability curve. If I know that in 10 years 67% of the jobs will not exist, I better be now prepared that after 10 years, how am I going to be operating?